Hi there. I'm Larry Johnson, and you are on Daniel Davis Deep Dive. Obviously, I am not Colonel Davis. He's off on a well-deserved vacation, though he did make an appearance yesterday, which was great to see him. I am normally at sonar21.com. Happy to be with you today. If you've been watching any of the media in the West, particularly in the United States, you're going to come away with the impression that uh, we've got Battle of the Bulge, only this time the Germans are winning. And in this case, the invading force are the Ukrainians. The ones on their heels reeling from the attack are the Russians. And this is just a terrific thing that is going to turn the face of the war in Ukraine. No, it's not. And it's important that we get into understanding the reality of what has happened. And to do that, we want to, we're going to use the words of both the Pentagon spokeswoman and our own beloved Senator Lindsey Graham. And I should probably have everybody who's watching or listening sign a waiver that you will not hold us liable for any damage to your psyche from having to listen to Senator Graham. But just be forewarned, this is like being prepared to get waterboarded. Only we're going to subject you to some of the nonsense of Lindsey Graham. Anyway, let's start with what is the Pentagon now saying about the Ukrainian invasion of Russia?
So we have seen some Russian units be redirected from operations in Ukraine towards the Kursk area. These are just early reports, so I can't really say with certainty the numbers or their objectives, but we have seen some movement. So right now, what I would say is it's still too early to tell. And we are, the secretary had a call with Minister Umerov yesterday. Throughout the department, we are engaging with the Ukrainians, trying to get a better understanding of their objectives.
So I'm here to help you understand what these people are saying. I mean, their lips are moving, words are coming out, but it doesn't always make sense. If Ukraine was enjoying a massive success, if Ukraine was really pushing back the Russians, had actually seized significant amounts of territory, was holding that territory, was consolidating their advance, you could bet every dollar you own and borrow enough to make a down payment on a mansion that Pentagon would be touting, singing this from the rooftop. There'd be dancing girls, there'd be balloons going off and fireworks, but they're not doing that. Notice the subdued tone because they know the fact of what's happening. The Ukrainian force that went in was only about 12,000, with 2,000 of those being mercenaries. Up to now, it looks like well over 1/3 are casualties, and that number is growing with each passing day. There was a report yesterday, for example, that there were 15 truck column of fuel trucks that were trying to get up to the line to refuel the tanks, armored personnel carriers, and other vehicles that the Ukrainians are using to try to get into Russia. Those fuel trucks were all blown up. No fuel. So they're going to run out. But part of the problem we have here is our political leadership is delusional. They're lying to us. Or if you listen carefully to what they say, they don't make any sense. And with that, we're going to talk about Lindsey Graham. The first video will show sort of the bombast of Lindsey Graham. He wants to kick some ass.
What I think about Kursk, bold, brilliant, beautiful. Keep it up. Putin started this, kick his ass. Bottom line is to the administration, I appreciate your support. Let these people fight. Give them weapons they need to win a war they can't afford to lose.
Let's talk about inhumanity. encouraging people to fight, to kill each other, to inflict harm on others is sort of, to me, the essence of evil. If you've ever been involved, go back to even your school days where two kids get into a fight and one's just getting pummeled. The natural instinct of anybody with some decency is to intervene, to stop the beating, to separate them, to keep people from hurting each other. What Graham is representing has been the American policy for so many years, where we really like to hurt people. We inflict damage. We do it because we never pay a price for it. It would be one thing if we had a system in place that every time we killed somebody, we'd lose a pound of flesh. That would probably stop the killing. In this case, we have Lindsey Graham cheering it on. But what's important to note is he deliberately does not understand what he's talking about, or he's lying, because he says some of the most remarkable things. He had a comment about the F-16. Listen to this.
When it comes to F-16s, way too long. They're here. Let's use them. Let's train Ukrainian pilots. When I talked to President Zelensky just a few minutes ago, if you're a retired F-16 pilot and you're looking to fight for freedom, they will hire you here. They're going to look throughout NATO nations for willing fighter pilots who are retired to come help them until they can get their pilots trained. So we're going to get these jets in the air sooner rather than later, and we're looking for pilots who are willing to fight for freedom as the Ukrainians train their own pilots.
Where are the Ukrainian pilots? What Graham just revealed in that is, we've been told for months, actually it started a year ago, that the U.S. and the NATO allies were training Ukrainian pilots. And, when I first heard of the so-called plans to deploy F-16s, I just knew, I knew it was ridiculous. It was not going to work. And there were others as well that had similar predictions, Doug McGregor, Scott Ritter, that, we recognize, and of course, Danny Davis, that the requirements to train a pilot is not something you do in 1 month or 2 months to learn to fly to be combat effective. And it's not just, this is not, again, Top Gun 1 or Top Gun 2, where you just got one pilot out there doing his thing. They're supposed to be working in a coordinated fashion with multiple aircraft. But now that those planes are somewhere in the region, and I understand that they're actually in Romania, that they're begging for, hey, if you're looking for something to do in your spare time, if you're retired, come over here and fly F-16s. And with a high likelihood that you're going to get shot down and killed by the Russians. So here's the disconnect, because even if they put those F-16s into the air, then what? What are they going to do? Well, the one thing they're going to do is further alarm the Russians and expand what the Russians are going to do militarily, because those F-16s are capable of carrying a nuclear-tipped warhead. And that is going to cause the Russians to take action, particularly if they see signs that they are being loaded up with anything that could potentially be a nuclear-tipped weapon. You could see the Russians striking into territories into Poland or Romania to destroy those aircraft. So here we have Lindsey Graham again, I guess he's pouring verbal gasoline on an already burning fire. And it's just beyond irresponsible. It's immoral. But he doesn't stop there. He sat down with Volodymyr Zelensky, who appears to be have a limited time left in office, but that's another subject. but Graham sat down with him, along with Senator Blumenthal of Connecticut. And Blumenthal, if you may recall, was the one who falsely claimed service in Vietnam when he didn't. Go ahead, Gary. Let's play Graham at the table.
So 2.5 years later, you're still standing and you're in Russia. Remind me not to invade Ukraine. I'm so proud of you, your people, your military, your leadership, your country. You're under siege unlike anything I've seen in my lifetime. They were predicting in Washington that Kyiv would fall in 4 days, the whole country would fall in 3 weeks. Well, they were wrong. And here we are all these months, years later, your people are suffering, they're resilient, and you're in Russia. Bold and brilliant. Taking this war to Putin to make him understand and pay a price is the right thing.
So in that clip, Lindsey Graham repeats a lie, and it's been a prominent lie in the West, and it's one that is used over and over again. And the lie is this, that Russia, when they started the special military operation, expected to capture Kyiv in 3 days, 4 days, and that it was the valiant defense of the Ukrainians that stopped the Russians. That is just a bunch of, as somebody calls it, a bovine affluent. It is a polite way of referring to what is excreted by cows after they eat. Russia surrounded Kiev, and then for about a month, they had a column of tanks that was anywhere, depending upon the media source, described as either 24 miles long or 40 miles long, but nonetheless, it was positioned north of Kiev. And during that entire month, that column was not strafed by Ukrainian aircraft or helicopters. That column was not attacked by any kind of Ukrainian ground force or guerrilla force with anti-tank guided missiles. Instead, it withdrew at the end of March. And why did it withdraw? Well, it was initially presented in the West as they were fleeing, the Russians were retreating. But the fact of the matter was, an agreement, a peace agreement, tentative peace agreement had been reached between Russia and Ukraine in Turkey. And that agreement would have allowed Ukraine to retain the Donetsk and Luhansk regions, as long as the Russians had the assurances that the rights of the Russian-speaking people in those regions would be protected, and that Ukraine was not going to join NATO. That was the essence of the deal. They had it worked out. And as a good faith gesture, Vladimir Putin ordered the withdrawal of that armored column, which was north of Kiev, ready to strike, and they withdrew. But what happened subsequently was that Boris Johnson, at the direction of Joe Biden, went to Kiev and told Vladimir Zelensky, don't do this, don't do that deal, or you lose all of our support. And I guess the money was too sweet for Zelensky to turn that one down. But on top of it, the British intelligence, then, along with the CIA, were involved with creating a narrative in Bucha, a town, a village north of Kiev, in which they claimed that the Russians had massacred all the citizens and left them in the streets, their bodies to rot. Well, it turned out that the Russians had left the town 2 days before those bodies appeared. And the mayor of Bucha had confirmed that at the time, that the people that they found laying on the ground had white armbands on, which was a sign that people would put on to identify themselves as friendlies to the Russians. So they're saying that the Russians killed all the people friendly to them. But when all is said and done, this war was there. The United States and the United Kingdom wanted this war to continue. Why? Senator Graham tells us. It's all about the money.
The weapons that they're using here are made in America, creating American jobs. And every weapon we give the Ukrainians are used to full effect. We've learned a lot about our own weapon system by providing them to the Ukrainians, what works and what doesn't. So I'm hoping that in December we can have another infusion of weapons provided by the United States to help the Ukrainians fight in 2025.
There you have it. It is about the money. It's about feeding the military-industrial corporation. It's about enriching stockholders. Here's Lloyd Austin, who's was on the board of Raytheon, and he's now directing a military effort where he's still got his stock holdings. I think are they're in a trust or something, but he's getting paid. This is about money in part. It's also in part about the desire of the United States to take as many of the resources from Russia as we could possibly get. But that's really how sick and perverted this is. This isn't about a fight for freedom. This isn't about a fight for democracy. That's the lie that's sold to the American people in order to get them convinced that, hey, let's just pile on some more money onto this funeral pyre and burn it up. Now, the other thing Graham said about, hey, the great thing about this war is we've learned about how good U.S. weapons are. Well, what we've learned is they don't work. They're not game changers. Or we can't produce them at any kind of rate that would to be able to sustain a real war if we were actually involved with the direct fighting on a day-to-day basis. Now, I've talked before about the Patriot missiles, the actual missiles that you put into the launcher. Lockheed Martin makes 550 of those a year. Ukraine has been using them up at the rate of probably 200 to 300 a month. Just do the math. There was only a finite number of those missiles. The same with HIMARS. HIMARS have proved effective at killing civilians in the Donbass, but they haven't proved very effective at destroying, disrupting, or curtailing the capabilities of the Russian military. Anti-tank guided missiles, the shoulder-fired ones, javelins, they've turned out to be a bust. M1 Abrams, heavy beast, great if you get to operate it on concrete, but doesn't do so well out in the muddy fields of Ukraine. What we've discovered out of this is that the United States has a defense industry that is set up, organized in order to make money, but actually not produce any kind of weapon systems that are combat proven, that are effective in the field, and that are cost effective, most importantly. We've gone for, I commented before about the B-2 bomber costs $2 billion. So just do the math. When the entire U.S. defense budget is about $850 billion, so just 50 of those planes would account for 12% of the total U.S. defense budget. I mean, it's incredible. It's the living definition of boondoggle. As we've seen from our comments from Senator Graham, this war in Ukraine was all about weakening Russia and making money for the shareholders of U.S. corporations. It turns out that this war effort is sort of backfiring on the United States. And the situation in Ukraine is right now, it's accelerating in its deterioration. Because while the battle is underway up in Kursk, and it's a lopsided battle that the Russians are winning, And I'm not saying that because I'm a paid agent of Vladimir Putin. I'm not. I can actually, though, read a map. And the Ukrainians do not have the logistics lines of communications to sustain troops to where they could both fortify themselves, dig in, and then resist both the air and ground operations of the Russians. And one of the reasons they can't is because the Ukrainians, despite having F-16 stored somewhere across the border in Romania, they don't have any effective air power themselves. They're on their own on the ground. So while that is taking place right now in the south, in the Donetsk area, in the Donbass region, the Russians are moving rapidly to the west towards the Dnieper River. They have entered the outskirts of a critical town called Pokrovsk. And that town is a logistics hub. It's a center where both the rail lines come in and go out, where the road that is a critical supply route for nearby cities exists. And once the Russians cut that, that is going to bring bring a pretty rapid collapse of the defensive lines throughout the Donetsk region. And the Russians will be probably by the end of September have full control of Donetsk, full control of Luhansk, and then it'll be a matter where they'll turn their attention to the regions of Zaporizhia and Kherson. So this war is going in the wrong direction as far as the West is concerned. Yet, despite that, you still get the Pentagon spokeswoman saying, and you get the people like Lindsey Graham pretending otherwise. So, just a reminder, when you hear them talking, don't believe what they're saying. Think through for yourself. And we'll here at Daniel Davis Deep Dive try to help you do that. I know that that is a priority for Colonel Davis. And he's done it since the outset of this show, and he will continue to do it. If you liked what we did today, please hit the like button below. Subscribe if you have not subscribed. And if you have a chance, you can come over and visit me at sonar21.com. Thank you for listening. Have a good day.